I was a high school English teacher and union president. So I was our teachers union president, and I have really bad ADD. So being an English teacher was hard for me, reading 100 papers, sometimes on the same topic, and getting feedback back to kids in a time that I thought was appropriate. I'll note that I really liked solving problems. As a union president, that's pretty much what you do, is you solve problems for people. I was good at solving problems, and I learned sometimes maybe I just felt like I was solving something wrong. I've solved a lot of adult problems, and in some cases solving adult problems made things worse for kids. So I thought about how could I use a skill set that has me being good at solving problems that would most of the time solve the right problems for students. So school administration seemed obvious, so I got my degree. And I got my master's degree in ed leadership and became an assistant principal athletic director first. Did that for 2 years and then became a principal. So I was principal at Rice Lake High School in northern Wisconsin before coming here. And my wife is a Madison native. And after 5 years in Rice Lake, she said, I'm moving back to Madison. So she never really enjoyed living in northern Wisconsin. So I looked around the Madison area, and there were 3 jobs that I was interested in: Sauk Prairie, Fort Atkinson, and Watertown, which all happen to be in the Badger Conference now. Sauk Prairie won over the others because of Cliff Thompson. Interviewing with Cliff Thompson as the superintendent, my first questions were, is that real? Is that really who he is? And when I learned that it was really who it was, I wanted to work for him. Second is just the location is arguably perfect. Right? Sauk Prairie on the Wisconsin River, halfway between the state capitol and Devil's Lake. I can't imagine at this point a place in the state that is better to live in. And then lastly, Prairie has amazing kids. I say this all the time, and people think that it's just being trite. That's a cliche. That's what principals say. But visitors here all the time comment on our kids go out of their way to be polite to people they don't know. That doesn't happen in other schools. And that happened on my visits here. I visited here 3 times before I took the job. And I learned that initially then, and it's only been reinforced in the 10 years since. I want to get better at our academic outcome. I think our culture is healthy. I think high schools are tough. High schools are a difficult place anyway, so I'm not saying it's universally true that we're a welcoming place, but we are a much more welcoming place than other high schools are, and than we were 10 years ago. We've done a great job with our facilities and increasing our utility of that and our welcoming of that and making it more efficient and energy efficient, all those kinds of things. I feel good about all those things. And we've made some good steps from an instructional standpoint. We've added more, we've almost doubled our AP classes since I came, things like that. But we have to be better at some of our outcomes for all students. In math, for example, I'd like to see us have a better math program that does a better job of preparing kids for the world outside of high school. And we're working on that all the time, and I think that's what the work of the rest of my career will be. What I hope is my legacy, and what I hope is obvious to students. Stereotypical models of male leadership are confining. The stereotypical 50-year-old male principal is a certain kind of thing. And it's really important to me to lead from a place of love. Male models of leadership speaking about love first are uncommon. And so that's a crucial part of who I am and how I think about the job and how I try to communicate about it with other people. I rarely get feedback on whether I'm successful in that because it's just not something that people are comfortable talking about, right? Sharing with the principal what you think they're doing well and what you think they're not doing well is not something that often happens. And certainly around things like emotional things about love and care and belonging. I believe, at least among faculty, that is something that has been one of my biggest areas of influence. And I don't know if kids will say that after I'm gone or not. My top priorities are to create a space where everyone feels safe, where everyone feels a sense of belonging and the opportunity to discover who they want to be, and that they have as many doors open for their future as they can, as many options for what they want to pursue next as they can. I always find it tragic when someone has an an option they want to pursue that's not available to them because of something that happened in their past. So those are my 3 things. It's a good question. I think that part of it is, so there's an author named Daniel Pink who writes about motivation, and he, as a theorist, he maintains that there are a few ways that people are motivated. One is by mastery, like improving at what you do so that you achieve mastery is motivating, right? That's one of the reasons why we play video games, for example, right? You get better and better and better at them. One is a sense of belonging, right? That if you feel like you belong to something greater than yourself, you will work to further that organization's goals. So mastery, belonging, and then autonomy. A sense that you have control over your life and that the decisions you make matter going forward. So like those 3 things, I think, are things that I constantly am thinking about as I'm working with staff to help them move forward. So my wife has a good answer to this question because people don't know what principals do. And early on in my career, I came home so somebody said, what does your husband do all day? And her answer to that was, well, today he came home not wearing a single piece of clothing that he wore when he left the house in the morning. And they were like, what do you mean that? Like that's the kind of thing that happens in a principal's day. Like, he got to school in the morning and a boiler pipe had burst overnight and it was raining in the band room. And he had to get all of the instruments and all of the sheet music out of there before it flooded. And so I just waded into that room wearing the clothes I was on, and then I was soaked, and I had to go to Walmart and buy a whole new wardrobe before I went home that night. And her point is that there isn't a typical day. When you're working with 900 teenagers and 130 staff members, and then 10,000 community members, a typical day doesn't really exist. And going back to what I said earlier when I became a principal, like I have pretty severe attention deficit disorder. The diversity of what happens in the day of a principal's life is actually what makes this a great job for me, because my ability to focus on one thing for a long period of time is suspect, but my ability to have really hyper focus on a really crazy thing for a couple minutes is pretty good. The day is not typical. Long story short, there's not a typical day. Wow. It's a good question. I work 60 or 70 hours a week now. I think it's unlikely that I'll go to doing just retiring. I want to travel. I want to fish and hunt. I want to play poker. I like playing poker. It's an interesting intellectual challenge for me. But also I want to do something with my life. I've been a principal now for 17 years. The national average is 4.5. So I hope that I have some wisdom that others can benefit from. So consulting and leading and coaching other leaders is a thing that you can do in retirement. And the other thing is that I was a creative writing major in my English degree. I have English was my major, and then creative writing was my minor. So writing and being creative. And I worked my way through college as a cook. So getting involved in the creation, like having a food truck and serving people great food would help me like feel creative.